core concepts that we infuse into our programming. Teaching is research, the idea that you can use your disciplinary research skills to ask questions about student learning in the classroom. Learning communities, the idea that bringing folks together for shared discovery and learning in settings like tonight lead to a more rich conversation on campus. And learning through diversity, the idea that everyone's backgrounds and experiences add to the conversation, and it becomes richer when you draw those out rather than seeing diversity as a challenge. We want to thank our co-sponsors tonight for the Roundtable events this semester, Dude Academic Technologies and the Office of Professional Development at the Graduate School. We'd also like to thank the Provost's Office for co-sponsoring this event this evening. The event tonight is part of the UW Voices series of events and conversations around diversity and inclusion. So we live in an age where national events like the death of young unarmed black men in Ferguson, Missouri, and Staten Island, New York are on our televisions and permeate our lives. Last fall, in response to these events, students in Madison took to the streets in protest. These national issues became a campus issue and an issue for our community. Tonight, we want to draw on that energy and focus the conversation on our classrooms, and we want to explore issues of campus climate. Amborst defines campus climate as the intellectual, social, and emotional and physical environments in which our students learn. Climate can be influenced by instructor-student interactions, student-student interactions, instances of stereotyping, microaggression or tokenism, demographics of students within the course, and the range of perspectives represented in the course content and materials. When we talk about creating inclusive classroom environments, we're focusing on using teaching approaches that address the needs of students from a variety of backgrounds, learning styles, and abilities. So an inclusive classroom or learning environment is one in which students feel equally valued and like they have equal opportunities to succeed. So I'm sure you've noticed the slides that we've tried to have running up here. They keep getting stuck tonight. They're part of the I2MUW-Madison initiative, which was in response to the I2M Harvard initiative, or photo campaign, which highlighted the faces and voices of black students at Harvard College. It was in reaction to students feeling that their voices were going unheard and their experiences devalued and their presence at Harvard questioned. The slides tonight call attention to the very real assumptions and questions that students have perceived here at UW-Madison and observed from interactions with their peers and colleagues on the Madison campus. We feel that awareness of this and this initiative on our campus can inform our conversation this evening. Our plan is to have undergraduate students from First Wave speak about their experiences here at UW-Madison. We'd like to transition back to the tables for conversation, and we're going to do that by giving you a few minutes to reflect on the questions that were on the small sheet of paper at your seats to let you ground what you've been hearing in your own experiences. There'll be some time for table conversation, and then we'll invite a few of our colleagues again to the front of the room to reflect on what the conversation that's been happening tonight and to bring forth some practices that you can use when you think about teaching more inclusively or think about classroom climate. As we begin, I want to remind you that we want this to be a safe space for conversation and discussion. We want the larger forum to feel safe as well as the conversations at the tables. The scholars on our panel are here to represent their experiences and opinions at UW-Madison. This evening, we ask that you listen actively, respect others when they're talking, speak from your own experiences rather than generalizing. Don't be afraid to respectfully challenge another person by asking questions, but focus on ideas that are being talked about rather than the individual who's speaking. We invite you to participate to the fullest of your ability because our growth as a community really depends on all voices being heard. Share your own story and experience. The goal tonight is not necessarily to agree on everything, but it's to gain a deeper understanding and be conscious of body language and nonverbal responses. What I'd like to do at this point is invite our undergraduate scholars to the front. I'll introduce them to you, and then we'll spend some time listening to their experiences here at UW-Madison. Fanique Hill is a sophomore hailing from the inner city of Milwaukee. She's a spoken word artist who's part of the 7th cohort of First Wave and is determined to major in early childhood education. She aspires to go back to Milwaukee to become part of the teaching staff of Milwaukee Public Schools to better the educational system and leave a legacy through exceptional teaching to inspire her students. Hiwat Adilo is a first-generation Ethiopian American studying anthropology here at UW-Madison. She was born and raised in Philadelphia. She's a sophomore and a member of the First Wave Hip Hop and Urban Arts Learning Community's 7th cohort. Her interests include all type of creative work, from the visual arts to writing poetry, prose, and songs. And she hopes to use her art as a vehicle to inspire understanding, growth, and love in her communities and in the world. Eric Newble Jr. is a First Wave scholar, again from the 7th cohort. He's from Normal, Illinois, and a sophomore at UW-Madison studying communication arts. He's a writer, musician, mixed media artist, and actor. In his art, he seeks to promote a conscious collective understanding of the human experience by using his experiences and interactions to examine the broader social implications of the world around him. And finally, Mariah Burton is from Detroit, Michigan, a singer, songwriter, MC, and host. She's a graduating senior at UW-Madison, majoring in history, Afro-American studies, and gender and women's studies. She's a First Wave scholar, which is where she's learned to incorporate education and purpose with performance arts. In addition to campus venues, her works have been performed at the Overture Theater and various community events. When Myra is not performing or writing, she is reaching out, Mariah. She is reaching out to various at-risk youth communities to serve as a mentor and example of things possible through determination and self-support. So please welcome our undergraduate student scholars. So we wanted to start by asking you to share a little bit about how you came to be at UW-Madison.
So my name is Eric. I am a sophomore here at UW. I'm from Normal, Illinois, which is what I tell people is the not Chicago part, not the suburbs or anything like that, mostly just corn. I kind of stumbled into UW-Madison in a way that I wouldn't have expected. I was applying to a lot of different schools across the Midwest and the East Coast and also the West Coast. And I threw an application in here, found out that I got in really early because I found out about First Wave. Worked out really well for me. Have been able to pursue art a lot here and have a lot of support in regards to academics and things like that. But definitely am in a place that I was not expecting to be in. Am glad that I'm here, but I'm sometimes a little shocked, a little intimidated. But it's a great place to be, and there's a lot of things going on that are really great. That's how I got here, though.
My story of how I came to UW is sort of geekish, a little dorkish. I was a big First Wave fan. The first time I ever saw them compete was perform was back in 2008 at BNV, Brave New Voices, which is the International Youth Poetry Slam of the United States. And so I was at BNV and I saw First Wave perform and I thought, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. That is where I have to be. And I was still, in between my sophomore and junior year of high school, and I just followed up with the program, came to passing the mic my senior year of high school, and turned it into my audition. Turned a simple festival into an audition in hopes that they would like me enough to offer me a scholarship. And after that, the rest of it was pretty much history. I'd always pretty much had good grades. I was active in my community back home. And all of that just helped with my application with First Wave. And he already said I'm from Detroit. It was already said I'm born and raised, the actual Detroit, not like Ann Arbor or East Point like some folks might. But yeah, that's pretty much how I ended up here.
Hi. Okay. So I am Fanique. I am from the inner city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the north side to be exact. And I went to Rufus King International Baccalaureate High School campus. And I always knew that I wanted to go to college. And I was like, yes, I'm just going to go and I'm going to be a teacher. And I'm going to rule the world. And I knew that I would go to either UW-Madison, Marquette, or the University of Chicago. But the only factor was I didn't have a lot of money. So I said, whoever is going to pay for me to go be me is where I'll go. And luckily, I stumbled upon First Wave, which has really benefited my life in many ways. And it brought me here to one of my 3 choices. And I have not been more happier since. More happier. Is that the correct phrase? More happy. There it is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hewat. I am from Philadelphia, and when I was in high school, they kind of trained us to apply for college. So you had to apply for high schools, and it was between the creative art high school and the high achieving academic school. I got into both, and I chose Central High School, and it was a great high school experience, but it was a college preparatory school. And when I was applying for college, I knew that I was gonna make sure that wherever I went, they were gonna pay for my education. So I made sure that I applied to colleges that either had a thing where if your family makes below a certain amount of money, they'll pay your tuition. But I found out about First Wave. First Wave is the reason that I'm here, and I found out about First Wave because a friend of mine who's a year older, as she was applying for the 6th cohort, we were talking on the phone, and I was looking into other schools that were mainly on the East Coast, and it ended up being of academics or art. And this is a wonderful academic institution as well. Had no idea about UW-Madison. I applied to it because of First Wave, and really made the choice in order to pursue my artistic interests as well as pursuing an academic career. And this was the option to be able to do both of those things. So that's how I ended up at UW-Madison.
Can you tell us what drives you to succeed academically?
Okay. So like it said in my bio, I am a first-generation Ethiopian American. Both of my parents were born and raised in Ethiopia and moved to Philadelphia. And in my immigrant story, school was very important to my parents. School is also very just the place that I went to get away from home, or the place that school is the place that I went. I didn't really do a lot of things until I got into high school and started doing a lot of spoken word things. So I'm driven by being the first one to go to college, by making my parents proud, but also just because school has always been something that I really just honestly enjoyed. And so I'm always, when I face a challenge that makes me question do I even like school, I have to just dig into that feeling of just really sitting down and reading for fun, and listening to music and doing my math homework, because maybe math wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I knew that I wanted to do well in school because it felt good to do well in school, because my parents gave me a pat on the back and said good job.
What drives me to succeed academically is 2 things. One is my family, and then the 2 is I've always known I've wanted to be a teacher. From the 3rd grade, I've known that I wanted to be in front of a classroom and teach. When other people said, oh, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or something of that nature, I said, yeah, but you need a doctor to learn that. You need a teacher to learn that. So I said, one day I'm going to be teaching you what you need to know. So I always wanted to be a teacher. And then going home back to Milwaukee and seeing my family who have never went to college, some have never graduated high school, only drives me to want to be that first person to do something, to say that, hey, I did this because I want to make you all proud, to see what I can to see how far I can go and what limits I can break is just something that really drives me to be me and to see how many lives I can change is like the greatest thing ever.
I think that this is a really interesting question. What drives me academically, to be successful academically? I would have to say that it's in part me wanting to fulfill my mission. Like one of the first things I decided when I got to this university, especially after sitting in a class and realizing that people had these certain expectations of what college students are supposed to act like and what college students are supposed to talk like and present themselves like. So I decided very early on that I wanted to make sure that by the end of my collegiate career that if by nothing but me alone you would understand that ghetto and stupid were not synonymous. And so that's one of the main things that kind of like keeps my head on. Is like, I got to finish this, because if I drop out now, it's like, you didn't really prove that ghetto and stupid weren't synonymous. It's like, was the work too hard? Or you couldn't do it? And it's like, at the end of the day, I understand that I'm in my last semester and I've never been asked to do something that was academically beyond like what I'm capable of. And for me, like, that's what really drives me. Is like, a lot of times it's just laziness at the end of the day. It's like time, like not really good time management. And at the end of the so wanting to prove that ghetto and stupid are not synonymous is part of what keeps me like striving academically. And then the other end is honestly knowing that a lot of this doesn't matter. And I mean, it matters because it matters. It's education. The more you know, you know? But then to a larger extent, it doesn't matter because education, since, I don't know, slavery times, has been used as the great divider in this country. And it's like, this is how we decide who's worthy to be treated like people and who's worthy to be treated like doo-doo, And I don't know, and realizing that makes me disconnected from academia at times. But then it also makes me feel really encouraged to just show that, like, you can be smart and you can be ghetto and you can be, and so which way is more, like the education that I have or my class? Like at this point, I don't know. I feel like to an extent my education is an experiment. It's less of an educational experiment, but more of a social experiment.
That's interesting. Yeah, Mariah talked about a lot of things that I kind of relate to. One of them is that thing like capability. You like to know as a person that you can do the things that you think that you can do. And a lot of times, because of self-doubt, which is like another one of those human things, like I will assume that I can't do the things that I like know I can. So then I'm like, I just have to. I have to prove something to somebody always. If that is myself, then that's the case, But a lot of times it also comes back to like expectations and like what you can read of people and like trying to see like what people expect of you. Also family, Fanique talked about, it's like a huge thing for me, like what my family expects of me, like is a lot of what I base like my like highest capacity on, like if my family thinks I can do something, then I trust them, So like it makes me like more inclined to do so. But at the same time, it's like to balance the fact that sometimes I think that like life is just already like such a college, like we're like, and that's like such the worst metaphor ever, because everybody's like, yeah, life is the greatest teacher, but it's like actually when I got to college and was like learning like a lot of like academic things that were like challenging me and I was like engaging with, I was like, yeah, this is awesome, but also I'm learning so much just from like living like right now with the people that I'm around, which is awesome. So yeah, that was a abrasive noise that can stop where I'm talking.
So I like the idea of capability and challenges. We have an opportunity tonight to talk about what it means to be an accepting campus and an inclusive campus. And I'm wondering if, in your time here, you found UW-Madison to be an inclusive campus, to find the campus climate to be accepting of you as who you are and how you are in the world.
Yeah, so this is all hard stuff, right? Can we all agree on that starting now? So like if anybody misspeaks, we're just like, hard stuff. It always gets you. So I guess the conversation always comes back to, for me, when we talk about these things, is like, how do we define inclusivity? And I was talking to Ade, which also if we haven't clapped for Ade Asefa, who's like holding first wave down, just shouts out clap. Ade, I was talking to Ade, and she's a huge support system for a lot of the students in this program, and that's a thing. So I was talking to Ade, and I was talking about this conversation around inclusivity and diversity and acceptance, and how they're all there's the and and the and and the and. I was talking about how inclusivity and diversity are seen as two different things, right? Because we have this diverse population that is coming to bring in diversity, and that's a great thing, but it's not necessarily a matter of, it's more of a matter of inclusion of diversity, right? And I think that a lot of that is a lot more difficult than just racial and ethnic boundaries, because it's you said, has it been inclusive of me as a person completely? Probably not, not always, not all the time. There's too many of us that are all individuals, at any given time, for everyone to get treated correctly often, But you can also notice tendencies, and you can also notice patterns within large scale populations of people, right? So generally, there's a lot of educators here that are really doing a lot to try to make sure that everybody does feel included, and that everybody has the safety and the support to reach whatever their highest capability is, because that's when our university can function at its highest capacity for itself, because if there's a bunch of people doing their best, then awesome, yeah, great. But it's hard because we're all humans, and people mistreat people all the time. So really, it's a toss-up. Sometimes, yeah, it's great. But I've had a lot of horrible experiences here that I didn't think I would have had, because people were inclusivity is real at UW-Madison and in the world. And, it's actually not all the time. So it's hard to say. Hard stuff, right?
I'm a triple major. History, Afro-American studies, and gender and women's studies. I like to say them all because it makes me sound really, really smart and busy. But in real life, I just studied history 3 different times. And I think that's a bit of a testament to how inclusive curriculum can be at times. The fact that the Afro-AM department is different than the history department, the AM and Afro-AM don't stand for America. For me, that's I don't understand. Why do I have to go to a whole nother department, a lesser respected department, for me to get the history of America? For me, that was one thing. And then just being an actual individual in the classroom, it's less of the educators who, I feel like EJ said, oftentimes, Eric said, oftentimes educators, they definitely strive to be inclusive. What's not as inclusive are my peers. I cannot tell you how many times I've sat in a lecture and no one has sat next to me. And I'm talking about the entire row is empty. And I'm wondering, well, so I took a shower, I showered, it's not that either. My breath isn't bad. I don't know what it is. And it's not until maybe 3-4 weeks in the semester where folks starts realizing damn, every time Mariah raised her hand, it starts off with, that's bullshit. But then everything she has to say after that is a really, really valid point, And so people are oh, she actually knows what she's talking about. Maybe she's okay. I won't sigh when I'm in a group with her this time. But the first 4 weeks is and it's, I don't know, for me, am I tripping? I don't know. I don't want to. A lot of times I really have to ask myself, did that just happen? Way too often do I have to ask myself, did that just happen? And I think at times I look around and I'm waiting for an instructor or a TA or professor or whoever is in the front of the class to say something or to acknowledge that this thing has just happened, and it never happens. And it's I feel like for some classes, I think maybe the instructor is waiting on other people in the class to correct this student or whatever students is doing Because there are a wide range of things. I'm not just mad because people don't sit next to me or people don't want to work with me. I'm talking about like people say ignorant comments, like using Negro in contemporary terms. Like, why are you talking about black people today and calling them Negroes? Like, that's not okay. You're not quoting a text. Like, stop. That's not cool. A lot of times when I'm looking for the authoritative figure in the classroom to say something, and they never do. And I don't know, a question to y'all or to just for y'all to reflect on, like, are you waiting on the other students in the classroom to correct? Are you going to jump in, or do you not see anything wrong with some of these things? And it's just like, those are a lot of the things. And it's like, a lot of times I feel like I have to say something like, oh, well, now I gotta be that black person that's going to say, don't say Negro. It's not cool, unless you're going to quote. No, I just look like I'm that hostile black woman, and I just perpetuated this stereotype. And or I could just sit back and act like it didn't happen, but everybody else is looking at me because they know something was wrong, and they're like, I know you heard that Negro. And they're looking at me and waiting for the classroom tensions are really interesting. It's less of the instructors. I have wonderful relationships with the majority of my instructors. Even the ones that don't like me, they love me. Even the ones that don't like me, they love me. It's more so like the peer-to-peer interactions, and where I feel like inclusion, and I feel like you can't force somebody to include other folk, And I don't know if it's necessarily something that y'all can do or who that kind of falls on. But I'm sorry, I got this for a long.
It's okay. You saying a lot of valid stuff. For me, I don't really seeing UW-Madison and inclusive in the same sentence has never occurred for me. Like I just don't see them meshing at this moment in my life. The one example that I can think of where I sit in the classroom, so I have a math class, and I go to it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm the only person of color in the class, and it's a real small class, so we all get to sit next to each other and work real close to each other, and the teacher likes to put us in groups, and every time I'm in my group, it's like there's a divider, and it's not spoken, it's real like, so if this is us, he would be me. And it's just like, hey, you guys, do you know this math problem? Do you get the answer? But no matter how much I move around to try to be in the group always evolves or like moves as to where I can't enter it. And so that's how I feel the campus is. It's like I'm here and I want to be a part, but like there is no opening. And as far as like what Mariah and EJ said, I do think it's not necessarily like the instructors. Like my instructors, they're really nice people and like they try and they're really friendly. But like most of my personal experiences are from my peers, because my peers are who I like actually talk to every day, and I have to sit next to, and I have to be with, and I have to live with, and yeah.
So I'm going to say no, because I'm taking this into consideration as like a complete whole. So do I think the campus is inclusive? No. I've had a lot of great experiences, or like pockets of time or courses that I've taken where I felt great and I felt like very affirmed, and like I've known that, yeah, I made it into this university through the admissions process, but I also, it's not a matter of me just like being placed here as like a diverse student to help make the university diverse, because as EJ was saying, there's a difference between diversity and inclusion. I've had wonderful experiences with professors who have reminded me that like I belong here. But because those things are necessary, because I need something to like run to, because I feel like I need to have someone remind me that like a part of the human experience, people want to like be told that they're doing a good job. But I think there's a difference between like really heavily like doubting that you're capable of something, or like even if it's not me personally doubting it, but I think my first semester I was really shaken up by, different instances of, yeah, I'm included because I'm sitting next to you in this classroom, but you touching my hair, or like my peers touching me, or like not sitting next to me in a lecture or something like that, those instances, and it can go on, and it's different for different people, but those instances of like, I'm included because I'm like being touched, or like I'm seen because I'm being like ogled, or like made into this like spectacle, or like, wow, you're so cool, but am I really being included and considered a peer and considered someone to not like take from, but just like to share with? So I think because that's constantly a question, and something that I find myself probably going to have to go back and forth between like dealing with through my like tenure here, I'd venture to say no. But also, like everyone has said, I've had like professors who have been very perceptive and like listened to me when I've explained, okay, this hasn't been the greatest, or like this is how I've been feeling in your class. I've also had people just kind of like, I think because of the lack of touch that a lot of people have sometimes, like, and the like, how intangible inclusivity and diversity tend to be, that until there are conversations like this that like tend to bring people's like hearts down, or just like, wow, like really that happened to you, like, whoa, but like, or like I've like done very terribly on something and I had to like go back and explain to my teacher, like, whoa, I was like shaken up for a week because this girl just like grabbed my hair, like what? Until like moments like that happen where the student has to like Mariah was saying, like, wow, do I have to get up and be that person to like bring this up into attention, or just like it's something that happened to me as an individual personally, so maybe I should just deal with it. Until those things happen, I think a lot of people are like, la, 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 this is the most people of color I've ever seen. We got this one black student in the classroom who raises her hand sometimes, and she's smart and it's cool. So again, no.
So I'm wondering if we can take questions from the audience or comments and build on what you're saying from your personal experiences to really dig into this a little bit more in the room. Are you comfortable with that?
Do your thing, for sure.
I invite you into the conversation.
I was curious if you all had thought about or saw a connection between like curricular inclusion and diversity and social inclusion and diversity, or actually in the conversation, about what's in the curriculum versus who's in the classroom and who we're having a conversation with.
It all depends on like what field you're in. With GWS tends to be really inclusive of so many different things, which is why, it's interdisciplinary. Afro-AM, it all depends on what kind of Afro-AM class you're taking. A lot of times they're coming from these really male-dominated perspectives. Or sometimes they're coming from, that's pretty much what male-dominated perspectives, unless you take specifically like black women's courses, which is oftentimes what I take. And then the history courses, often, those are the like that's my outside, for me, my outside major. And that's the one that's, I had to take Afro-AM and went GWS, otherwise I would never see myself in history. And when you're in those history classes, you look around and there's nothing but white men, like 95% of the time. And so it's like, this is why history is taught the way it is. The only people that are really sitting here learning it are the same people who's teaching it. Like, and it's like, well, how do we build a more inclusive curriculum within history without saying, okay, well, Afro-AM is totally different, so we're going to put that over there. We're not going to even touch that with that. Like, I can't even think of the majority of my Afro-Am classes did not cross-list with my history classes, though they were maybe 85% based in history. And so the fact that they didn't cross-list, to me, I felt like, what is this, not a valid history? What is it? Because it's from this perspective, it's not, it can't, I just didn't quite understand that. So yeah, my experience, I took Afro-Am GWS because they were really inclusive. Whereas history, in my experience, is like, who said that? I bet I could tell you who wrote this. He was middle class. He had a professional education. But yeah.
In the same way, I'm like trying to pursue like courses specific to like my identity, or just like places that like I may potentially not see myself if I just take history classes. But I think like the use and consideration of like certain language in classes is important. Not I like hear a lot of people like complain about like political correctness, and that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. But just in terms of like professors and TAs have so much power, because like there might be like 3 students of color in a lecture hall, but there's a whole bunch of like white students. And so if someone says something like mishandles a term, or just like it's very dismissive of a term that like a group of people might use to like identify themselves with, or something that's really important, that is dangerous, because like students who are hearing these words for the first time may think like they're not going to walk up to the professor and like find out that they were like tired of hearing that word in like conferences or something. They're just going to know that, oh, this teacher said that word like is annoying, so it's annoying, I don't want to use it. Or if like someone brings it up to them in conversation, they're going to just be like, whatever, it's not that important. So just kind of like, I think at all times, I mean, all people should just kind of be aware of like who they're talking to, and just how impressionable these students are. Like I had a professor like, or like a guest speaker, like just like call like slavery immigration, or he was, but I mean like that is a whole nother different thing. But he was just like, 3/4 of the immigrants to the Americas were African. Now let's talk about slavery. And I'm like, are these two things the same thing? Because that doesn't, I mean, I'm learning, I'm a student here too, I don't know everything, but that doesn't, like, for me that doesn't sound right. And now to these 150 white kids, that they're gonna think that these two things are synonymous. So just kind of like realizing how much power that you all actually have, and I think things will be good.
The two of you that spoke, you talked about seeking out courses that spoke to you and your identities. Last semester, I had the pleasure of working with you, Fanique, in Physics 109, and you were my tutor. So because we do seek out courses that speak to us, a lot of people think that we are incapable of doing things that are like STEM, you know, engineering, math, all of those things. But you, Fanique, you are a physics tutor, like, and that's awesome. So could you please speak to your experience working in the physics department and with the faculty? Do you think that they included you and saw you as, you know, a capable and just knowledgeable part of the department? When I actually took the physics class and like being a physics tutor, I felt like I felt like the physics department was very inclusive. Like my bosses, Susan and Chris, hey y'all out there. But yeah, I thought that they were very inclusive, and like when I had an idea, oh, and Josh is out there too. Hey Josh. Yeah, whenever I had like an idea or like thought something would work, they would hear me out instead of like shushing me or like not hearing me out, which I feel is like a really big thing, because so many times we can hear something but we're not actually listening. And so I felt like I was really included. I felt like my thoughts actually had some like validity. Like I felt like they were significant, and I felt like I could say what I thought or what was wrong without being reprimanded or feeling like I should bite my tongue. And then, but on the other side, like I'm taking a botany course. I don't feel like that's as inclusive. So I feel like it just depends on so yeah, with STEM, like math, I took a ton of math courses because I really loved math when I came in here. I took a few, I stopped taking them because I didn't love math anymore once I got here. But yeah, I didn't feel like that was as inclusive. So I feel like it's just really like the department that you're in and the people that you work with.
So I'm a TA. I have some African American students sometimes, and there are sometimes that I really want to do something, but I have this question in my mind that's, okay, if I say something, if I take step, maybe that student will feel that as a TA, I'm seeing that person different from others. So I want to do something, but on the other hand, I feel that maybe I will put that student on their spot. So, and I know that individuals are different. So what do you, I mean, if you were the student, do you prefer the TA or faculty member to talk loud, maybe put you on their spot, or you prefer, how do you prefer the faculty take step?
If you like actually have like a concern or like really just want to like connect with me, like pulling me to the side or like talking to me after class or like writing me an email or like, yeah, something that's like not as like in front of like a bunch of people that don't look like me and already stare at me.
But on the flip side of that is I feel like if you're in a classroom, and I'm in a classroom as well, I'm put myself in it, I statements. If I'm in a classroom, we're in a classroom, and another student says something ignorant about an overall race, I would attack, like, don't say, why would you say that when Mariah's in the room right here, you know? I would prefer, like, to attack the idea and not necessarily the person. Because, I mean, people don't learn if they feel like you're coming at them anyways. If they feel like, oh, you coming, like you're trying to attack me, well, I just said Negro, why are you attacking me? You know, if you attack, but if you criticize the idea behind what it is that they've said, I don't think that any student, I know I personally wouldn't get offended. I can't necessarily see how somebody could get offended if you've not necessarily called, like put them on the spot, but you've just pointed out what somebody else has said and why it's problematic. But yeah, most definitely, please say so.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that like Don said even in the beginning of this was like try to use I statements and don't make generalizations. Like there are things that you can say to people in a classroom when they like step out of pocket that can like put them in a pocket and like also like but not be like super like singling that person out, you know, because like Mariah said, like if you come at people, like naturally they're gonna like get defensive or like be offended or be mad and just like dejected, not pay attention to what you're saying. But like if someone says something, like I would say that back to what Hewa was talking about with the amount of power that you have, like that's a moment that you have to have, no matter if you're like worrying about like singling students of color out because they feel like they're being like treated differently because they want to make sure that they're safe. No, that is a thing that like has to happen for safe space to be a thing at this university, you know? So like if somebody says something, like it's just a matter of being like that's not like language that like is appropriate, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not something that you should say, or like you shouldn't make generalizations, like, you know what I'm saying? Like even for people to see as a precedent that like if they slip onto like their own opinions too much and like understand that like it's encroaching upon other people's like emotional like stability or like educational like what people stand on as like what they know to be their identity, you know? And like if people see that you set a precedent of like not allowing that to happen, then it's like gonna like allow people to check themselves more. So I would say that like don't, if anything, do what Fanique said, like go to that person after class and be like, hey, I don't want you to feel like I was like trying to make you like draw attention to you or anything like that, but like what they said was inappropriate and I needed to make an example of that. You know what I'm saying? But don't pass up the opportunity because I think it's important, and like I've had a lot of instances with TAs where I was like, I can't believe you just said that and you're not going to check yourself. And like I've also like have had times where it's like I can't believe they just said that and you're not going to check them. You know what I mean? So it's got to be a thing.
I'm going to invite the panelists to join tables where there aren't other students and give you a few minutes to reflect on the questions on the small sheet, to really think about how these experiences relate to your lives on campus. Before we make the transition, though, I really would like to thank our scholars for coming and really opening up the conversation for us so that we can go deeper with this issue. So if you wouldn't mind, please. What we'd like to do to sort of bring the evening together is ask a couple of our colleagues to reflect on the conversations that they've been part of and hear the conversations they've heard in the room tonight, because we'd like you to leave thinking about the types of things that you can do in your classrooms, on campus, to work toward this more inclusive environment for students and for all students. So what I'd like to do is to introduce Dr. Madeline Hafner. She's the Executive Director of the Minority Student Achievement Network at the Wisconsin Center for Education Research. Dr. Hafner's research and teaching interests focus on developing educators' attitudes and beliefs regarding issues of diversity, equity, and social justice, as well as collaborative university-school partnerships. And with Madeline is Dr. Andrew Lakuta. He's a faculty associate and lecturer in physiology. He was also the recipient of the 2012 Chancellor's Hildale Award for Excellence in Teaching. And Drew has been teaching physiology for the last 14 years, and each year teaches over 1,100 undergraduate and graduate students in physiology. So he's here to share from his unique experiences as well. So if you would please welcome them and thank them for being here with us.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So this has been really, people at my table, this has been really great. As an instructor, I am so interested in having an inclusive classroom and hearing from the students. And in particular, I think what I want to share with you is this idea that it's been 15 years now, and we're up to 1,200 students per year that take my course. It's all the allied health professionals must take it. And it's hard. It's known as one of the hardest classes on campus. It kicks your ass. And it was pointed out to me several years ago that we have a significant achievement gap. And I kind of knew what that was, but I wasn't really clear until they showed me the numbers. If you were in a identified minority category, you stood a 40% chance of getting a D or F in the class. 40%, that's almost half. If you were in the majority class, or identification, it was only 20%. So the achievement gap was huge. And the question was put to us by some administrators, what can you do about this? And I had the honor and privilege of meeting Dawn and being part of the Delta program, in which we tried to come up with some intervention to reduce the achievement gap. And I know some of you have heard this before, but I have to tell you because this has been one of the most powerful moments of my life. In preparing for an intervention in our class to reduce the achievement gap, Dawn assembled some students, much like this. It was 9 students, but it was in a very small room, very close, and these 9 students had to sit there and have people like me staring at them to talk to us about their experiences. And we got to the last student, male, and he stood up, and he says to us, I want you to know, I'm a Native American. I've been on this campus 4 years, and never once has any of you ever told me a contribution of a Native American to anything we're studying. And that's wrong. And he sits down. And I said, my goodness, there you go. Now there's something. Because sure enough, if you go get your physiology textbooks, those tomes that are good doorstops, who do they talk about in there? If they mention anyone at all, who is it? It's old dead white guys from Europe, right? When was the last time any of the textbooks had a contribution of anyone but them? So we came up with this idea. We are going to have our students, they must attend discussion. We had done that before. Discussion class was optional. Okay, you have to go. It's now a graded component of this course. That's a good idea. During discussion, we're going to have questions relevant to what we're studying, cardiovascular physiology. Here are some questions that you have to work on as a group. And at the top of it was an image and a little biography. Turns out, and this is one of easy examples, one of the pioneering heart surgeries that they now do on everyone across the world is credited to a Caucasian male from Johns Hopkins. But the reality is that guy was taught, that guy was trained by an African American. He's the one that deserves the credit. So we put his picture there and we put a little biography about him. And we did this throughout the course. At the end of the semester, I am so pleased to say, don't know why, because, and again, teaching is research. Me being a researcher, this is just so captures me. We had a good result, but I don't understand why. I don't understand what it means. The D and F rate went down to 28%. That's fantastic. But there's still an achievement gap because everyone did better. So I didn't get rid of the achievement gap. I didn't reduce it. I just made everyone do better. And I don't know exactly how or why. And that's I know we're onto something, because when you don't understand the results, that's when you really got to get into this and figure out what's going on. So I just wanted to share that, because I think it's a great example of there are things we can do as instructors. There are things we can talk about. But it really starts, in my case, with the courage of students to talk to me. 500 students in the class. How many come to office hours? Not many. I am the least intimidating person on this campus. Why are they not talking to me? And when they do, the stories, the information you shared, you students, courage, it's all about the courage to do that. That is so helpful, because that's how we can make positive growth. So I wanted to thank you personally for doing that. You and all the other students that have come before me. So, I've talked long enough. I'll pass it off to Madeline.
Thank you so much. I'm in I dare reinforce this dichotomy. My research has been in the soft sciences, in the social sciences, and so what I have done professionally for the last 15 years is to understand exactly what happened in your classroom when you started providing those examples. So understanding how racial identity awareness develops and how we can interrupt some of the opportunity gaps, close them, that we persistently reinforce, it seems, in our practice, especially in higher education. So empirically what you did was reduce stereotype threat. And so probably you saw significant gains for women as well in the sciences. So anyway, but one of the findings in the research is teachers, you have taken the first step within the Delta program on this journey of creating inclusive classrooms. And the first step that you've taken is understanding the role racial self-awareness has in the work you do on this campus. Several of us at the table were discussing how might we all create a course that everyone takes the first semester where we all have a common understanding of terminology such as racial identity, privilege, what is an ally, those types of terms. And so when we look at what are some actual skills educators can use in their classrooms on the college campus to create more inclusive learning environments, the first skill I would encourage you to engage more deeply in is exploring your own racial identity. And what does it mean to be who you are? We all come to this table with multiple identity markers. Much of what the young people talked about on the panel are manifestations called microaggressions of the racialized United States we live in. And so I'm a geek. I love books. I know they're old-fashioned. But if any of you, maybe even if you want to share among a couple in your department, Microaggressions in Everyday Life, Race, Gender, and Sexual Orientation. This is by Daryl Wing Su, sort of the preeminent scholar in doing empirical research around microaggressions. And I think the students spoke powerfully about the role of the instructor, the TA, or the professor in moving from understanding racial identity awareness and what does it mean for me to be an ally, what does it mean for me to seek inclusivity, understand, to action. And that's when the real change takes place. And so I'm going to just give you a couple of, and I'm happy to correspond with you personally if this is an interest of yours, or if you're a coordinator in your department around supporting your TAs and becoming more culturally competent. But one of the facts, I know hard scientists love that word, facts, in what I would call anti-racist education is there are no innocent standbyers in this process of racism, institutionalized racism. So you know, even if you say I teach content, I don't teach about anti-racism, you do. So within a full action continuum that our colleagues at Amherst have developed is you are either through your action or inaction constantly supporting oppression, or you are engaging against it. So to just be conscious of that by saying I'm not doing anything harmful really means we are. So, and there's a whole empirical base that supports how our inaction is actually action. So to just sort of reflect on that as you're moving through. The other piece that's important in classroom is that content and process matter equally when you look at gaining a more inclusive instructional environment. So within a social justice framework in a classroom, it's acknowledging the process. Almost all of them to the person talked about the instructor didn't intervene. I think the example used was someone said, well, the Negro population or something, like in modern day terms. Perfect example of how you could interrupt deficit thinking, a variety of stereotypes about who a population of people are. So again, it's looking at how do I engage in that moment a process that allows us to acknowledge that comment might have meant something. And that's another piece. I know it sounds a little psychobabblish. Somebody had mentioned previously, Don did a great job of setting up guidelines for discussion, using I statements, things like that. So just realizing across the United States, not just professors in classrooms, but people in K-12 schools as well, we are all engaging in these conversations about race and racism. I don't want to disrespect the topic of Ferguson tonight. These are numbers to many people. These are statistics of gaps. But the reality is these are precious lives that we have choices to include or exclude every day of our professional lives. So I think that's also something to remember, that to engage in a process that acknowledges that someone may experience the word Negro differently than what you as a white female have experienced. And the other piece, the last piece that I'll talk about, so action, there is no such thing as inaction, content and process both matter, is intent and impact. So again, slightly psychobabbly, it's all good, but as an ally to my African American, my Latino brothers and sisters, I will make mistakes. I will not intend to make that mistake, but I will. And so the question then becomes, in what way do I have a relationship with people who can reflect to me the impact of whatever it was I said or did? And as an ally then, I engage in reconciliation, and then I move on in that relationship, but that only happens in a relationship. So recognizing that intent and impact are two very different things. And so as professors, we often say, well, I don't think they intended that to be hurtful. The impact was it was hurtful. So it should never have taken 4 years to realize a young man's heritage was never reflected in a curriculum back to him. Never the intent of a physiology department or course. but the impact obviously was significant. So those are my sort of tips for in classroom practice. Again, I'd be happy to email you any information. And I just want to thank the Delta program for being here. I think it's making significant changes on this campus and in others, so thank you.
So as we wrap up for tonight, I want to thank all of our panelists, Madeline and Drew. I'd like to thank Eric and Mariah and Hiwat and Fanique for starting off the evening and for really giving us an opportunity to jump into the conversation fully.